I never thought of myself as the type of woman who would betray her husband. But then again, I never thought my husband would forget how to look at me the way he used to. It started with a glance. A simple, lingering glance across the dinner table. My husband, Ethan, was laughing at a joke that his best friend, Ryan, had made, oblivious to the way Ryan's eyes stayed on me just a fraction too long. Ryan had always been around. He and Ethan had been best friends since college, inseparable in a way that made me admire their bond. When I married Ethan, I accepted Ryan as part of the package, a permanent fixture in our lives, always dropping by, always tagging along. He was charming in a way Ethan never was. Where my husband was steady and responsible, Ryan was reckless and exciting. The kind of man who knew how to make a woman feel noticed. I told myself it was harmless. The teasing, the stolen glances, the subtle way his hand would brush against mine when we reached for the same dish. It was just Ryan being Ryan, flirtatious, playful. And I was just enjoying the attention. But then came the night everything shifted. Ethan had invited Ryan over for drinks, something they did often, but work had kept him late. I was home alone when Ryan arrived, looking effortlessly casual in jeans and a dark t-shirt. He grinned at me as I opened the door. "Looks like I'm early," he said, stepping inside without hesitation. "He's running late," I replied, trying not to notice the way his eyes flickered down my body. I had dressed in something simple, a loose knit sweater and leggings, but suddenly, I felt exposed. We sat in the living room, waiting for Ethan, sipping wine instead of the whiskey they usually drank together. The conversation started light, work, travel, reminiscing about old times. But then he leaned in, his voice lower, softer. "You know, I always wondered what it would be like," he said, swirling the wine in his glass. I swallowed. What would be like? His gaze was steady, unwavering. "If you'd met me first." I laughed, but it came out strained. "Ryan." "I'm just saying," he continued, shifting closer. "Ethan got lucky. Something in me should have shut this down. I should have gotten up, put distance between us, reminded him, and myself, that this was dangerous. But I didn't. Instead, I stayed there, watching his lips as he took another slow sip of wine. The air between us was thick, charged. Then, the sound of the front door unlocking broke the moment. I jumped back just as Ethan walked in, greeting us with his usual easy smile. And just like that, whatever had been building between Ryan and me disappeared into the unspoken silence of what almost happened. But the problem with temptation? It never truly goes away. I told myself it was nothing. That Ryan's words had been meaningless, just casual flirting, the kind that didn't matter. But the problem with crossing a line, even if just in thought, is that it makes crossing the next one easier. Ryan and I didn't talk about what happened that night, not in words, at least. But something had shifted. The air between us was charged now, crackling with an unspoken understanding. The next time I saw him, it was at a barbecue at our house. Ethan was busy manning the grill, laughing with friends, while I stood at the kitchen sink rinsing out a wine glass. I felt Ryan before I saw him, his presence behind me, too close, his voice low near my ear. "You look good tonight." A simple statement. Innocent on the surface, but it wasn't. I turned to face him, heart pounding. "Ryan, we can't." "Can't what?" He smirked. "Talk. Compliment a beautiful woman?" I should have walked away. Instead, I let the moment stretch, let myself enjoy the way he looked at me. Like he saw me, really saw me. When was the last time Ethan had done that? He reached past me, his hand grazing my hip as he grabbed a beer from the counter. My breath hitched. A touch so brief, so subtle, but enough to make my skin burn. The rest of the night, I felt his eyes on me. I knew I was playing with fire, but I couldn't stop. Then, one evening, Ethan had to leave town for a work trip. He kissed me goodbye, told me he'd be back late the next night, and just like that, I was alone. And Ryan knew. I don't know if I texted him first or if he just sensed it, but an hour after Ethan left, there was a knock at the door. I hesitated. I should have ignored it. I should have locked the door, turned off the lights, and gone to bed. But I didn't. When I opened the door, Ryan stood there, hands in his pockets, eyes dark with something unspoken. "I just wanted to check on you," he said. I swallowed hard. "I'm fine. Are you?" I knew what he was really asking. I stepped back, letting him inside. The door clicked shut behind him, sealing us in together. And this time, I didn't stop him when he reached for me. I wish I could say I stopped it. That when Ryan's hands slid over my waist, when his lips brushed against my neck, I had the strength to push him away. But I didn't. I let it happen. I let myself sink into him, into the heat of his touch, the reckless desire that had been building for weeks. The guilt barely registered as his hands traced over my skin, as my body betrayed every promise I had ever made to Ethan. It was supposed to be a mistake. A singular lapse in judgment. Something we would pretend never happened. But once you break something, you can't unbreak it. Ryan and I became reckless after that night. Stolen moments when Ethan wasn't home. Glances across crowded rooms that spoke of all the things we had done. The rush of sneaking around, the thrill of almost getting caught, it was intoxicating. I told myself it didn't mean anything, that I still loved my husband. But deep down, I knew that was a lie. And then Ethan found out. It happened on a Saturday evening. He had been acting strange all day, quiet, distant. I figured he was just stressed from work, maybe exhausted from all the long hours he had been putting in. Then, after dinner, he set his fork down carefully, looking at me with an expression I couldn't place. "How long has it been going on?" The air was sucked from my lungs. I tried to play dumb, but the look in his eyes told me there was no point. He knew. "Ethan," my voice barely worked. "Don't." He exhaled sharply, shaking his head. "Don't insult me by pretending." "I know, Hannah." I stared at him, my mind racing. How? Had Ryan said something? Had someone seen us? As if reading my thoughts, Ethan pulled out his phone and slid it across the table. My heart stopped when I saw the screen. Texts. My texts. "I saw your phone last night," he said, his voice eerily calm. "You're not as careful as you think." My hands trembled as I reached for the phone, scrolling through the messages I thought I had deleted. Messages that were vague enough to hide from suspicion, until you strung them all together. "Can't stop thinking about you. I miss you. Tonight?" My stomach churned. Ethan let out a hollow laugh. "I wasn't even looking for it, you know. I just needed to check the time while mine was charging." And then I saw his name. He leaned back, crossing his arms. And something told me to look. Funny how that works. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. What could I possibly say? "I just have one question," he said, his voice tight. "Was it worth it?" Tears burned my eyes. "Ethan, don't." His jaw clenched. "Don't cry. Don't act like you're the victim here." I swallowed hard. "I never wanted to hurt you." His laugh was bitter. "Then maybe you should have thought about that before you fucked my best friend." The silence that followed was unbearable. Finally, he stood, running a hand over his face. "I can't do this, Hannah." His voice cracked. "I can't even look at you right now. Ethan, please." But he was already walking away. The front door slammed behind him, and just like that, the life I had built with him shattered at my feet. And the worst part? I wasn't sure if I regretted it. The fallout. The house felt too quiet after he left. The kind of silence that wasn't peaceful, but heavy. Suffocating. I sat at the table for what felt like hours, staring at the phone Ethan had left behind, the messages still glowing on the screen. The evidence of my betrayal. My phone buzzed. I knew who it was before I even looked. Ryan, did he find out? I let out a shaky breath. My hands trembled as I typed back. Yes. He left. The dots blinked as he typed a reply. Then. Do you want me to come over? I stared at the message, my stomach twisting. The answer should have been easy. No. But as I sat there, my marriage crumbling around me, all I could think about was the warmth of Ryan's touch. The way he made me feel seen. Wanted. I hesitated. And then. Yes. Minutes later, there was a knock at the door. I stood slowly, my heart hammering against my ribs. This was it. I was making a choice. I opened the door. And let him in.